22 years ago, the greatest film director in the world, Steven Spielberg, brought dinosaurs back to life with the release of Jurassic Park. Following that piece of escapist entertainment, Spielberg's next film would be not intended for younger viewers. This was a true story, more terrifying than dinosaurs. It's called Schindler's List. And I call this editorial, The List is Life. In 1980, in Beverly Hills, Thomas Keneally, an Australian novelist, was going into a suitcase shop to return an old worn-out suitcase. The shop was run by a man named Leopold Page. While waiting for his credit card to be processed, Page told Keneally the story of a man he worked for while living in Poland during World War II, named Oskar Schindler, a member of the Nazi Party, womanizer, and war profiteer. What intrigued Keneally was the idea of paradox, the fact that this man was a Nazi and he managed to save the lives of 1,100 men, women, and children by having them work in his kitchenware factory. On October 18, 1982, Schindler's List was published and became a bestseller. It soon caught the attention of the chairman of NBC Universal Pictures, Sid Sheinberg, who in turn gave it to the right man for the job, Steven Spielberg. Spielberg at the time was basking in the glory that was the box office success of E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and the then 36-year-old director was given the book in the hopes of doing the film. Spielberg was moved by it. However, he was hesitant to consider directing a story so extreme and controversial as the Holocaust. Spielberg wasn't the son of survivors of the Holocaust, but his grandmother taught English to Hungarian Holocaust survivors. Spielberg felt that he had to be emotionally ready to take on the story of the Holocaust. What really contributed to this was the birth of his son Max, his later marriage to Kate Capshaw, whom they first met while making Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, but also a transition into making more serious adult-oriented films such as The Color Purple, Empire of the Sun, and Always. But Universal was eager to start work on it, but Spielberg kept holding out on it and worked on other projects. Spielberg had offered the project to other directors, such as Roman Polanski, a survivor himself, and Martin Scorsese. Scorsese had been on the project for quite a while, and was responsible for hiring Steven Zaillian to adapt Keneally's book. During that time, Spielberg was developing a remake of the J. Lee Thompson thriller Cape Fear for Universal. While working on Schindler's List, Scorsese started to feel distant from the project. He believed that a Jewish director would have a better understanding of the Holocaust than one who was raised Roman Catholic. At the same time, Spielberg was losing interest in Cape Fear. So in the end, the projects were switched. Spielberg got Schindler's List, and Scorsese got Cape Fear. However, Sheinberg told Spielberg that he could make Schindler's List on one condition, that he do Jurassic Park first. He agreed. Once editing on Jurassic Park was complete, Spielberg turned Jurassic Park over to his friend George Lucas, and Spielberg immediately departed for Poland to begin work on Schindler's List. When Spielberg held a read-through of the script written by Steven Zaillian, Academy Award winner Warren Beatty read the part of Oskar Schindler. Spielberg, however, felt that Beatty wouldn't do well with the German accent, and also didn't want to have movie star baggage in a story that didn't need movie stars. One evening, Spielberg and his wife Kate Capshaw attended a performance of a production of Anna Christie. In it was an Irish actor named Liam Neeson. Despite appearing in such films as Excalibur, The Deadpool, and Darkman, Neeson had the charisma, the charm, and the bearing of Schindler.
Oskar Schindler, they'll say. Everybody remembers him. He did something extraordinary. He did something no one else did. He came here with nothing, a suitcase, and built a bankrupt company into a major manufactory, and left with a steamer trunk, 2 steamer trunks full of money. All the riches of the world.
For the part of Schindler's Jewish bookkeeper, Itzhak Stern, Spielberg turned to Sir Ben Kingsley. Kingsley, having appeared in several films and had won an Oscar for playing Gandhi, was the right embodiment of Schindler's inner voice of reason. He is the conscience of Oskar Schindler.
You're staying, I take it.
Krakow, what nice for?
What for? You have a business to run. Of course, you'll have to hire new workers. Poles, I guess, they cost a little more, but... what are you going to do?
To personify the ruthless Nazi commander and war criminal Amon Get, names were suggested, including Tim Roth. But Spielberg saw 2 films, A Dangerous Man, Lawrence After Arabia, and Wuthering Heights. Both films featured an actor from the Royal Shakespeare Company named Ray Fiennes. Using research given to him from his visit to the Imperial War Museum and studying surviving photographs, Fiennes was able to embody the devil by giving Get a combination of cold, cruel brutality and evil sexuality.
They cast a spell on you, the Jews. When you work closely with them, like I do, you see this. They have this power. It's like a virus. Some of my men are infected with this virus. They should be pitied, not punished. They should receive treatment, because this is as real as typhus. I see this all the time. It's a matter of money.
To play Schindler's forsaken wife, Emily, Spielberg casted an actress he had previously worked with, named Caroline Goodall. And finally, to play Goethe's tormented house servant, Spielberg casted South African actress Embeth Davids. For the majority of the cast, Spielberg used a combination of Israeli actors and Polish extras. March the 1st, 1993. Schindler's List began shooting in Krakow, Poland, using 148 basic sets and 34 to 45 locations in and around the city. The one set that had to be built entirely from scratch was the Plaszow forced labor camp. Using the surviving blueprints, production designer Alan Starsky and his set decorator Ewa Braun recreated the forced labor camp, where many perished at the hands of Amon Get, the camp's commandant. Another crucial location was Auschwitz. The mere mention of its name brings to mind stories of sadness and loss on a grand scale. Prohibited by government officials to shoot inside Auschwitz, Spielberg was able to shoot just outside the gates, making the outside inside with the help of Starsky. Needless to say, shooting at Auschwitz was hard for everyone involved, in particularly Spielberg. Filming Schindler's List was like waking up and going to hell, Spielberg once said. There was great sadness every day on set. I had actors breaking down from the stress of the recreation, and crew members would walk away from the camera in tears and wouldn't come back from 10 minutes. At one point, Spielberg wouldn't even bother communicating with the actors playing the Einsatzgruppen, saying, "When the German actors put on those uniforms, I didn't see an actor, I saw an icon of murder. And I wouldn't talk to them until the day we had Passover in Krakow. I had all the Jewish actors sitting around at a table, then all the German actors walked in. They all put on their yarmulkes and they sat next to the Jews, and they took part in the service of the taking of the bitter herbs and the drinking of the wine, and I sat there and cried. I just sat at the head of the table and I wept. And it was the last time I asked anyone to bear the crosses of their forefathers." The film was shot entirely in black and white in order to illustrate the time period of the film was taking place. Plus, Spielberg wanted to emulate a documentary filmmaker witnessing the horrible crimes against humanity taking place over many years ago. The studio, with the exception of Sid Sheinberg, weren't too pleased about this approach because they felt that if the film were made in color, it would sell more when it hits VHS, and no one would sell a black and white, and particularly a 3-hour movie about the Holocaust. But Spielberg insisted. He didn't want to beautify the Holocaust. However, the iconic moment with the girl in the red coat was one of the very rare occurrences color would be used in the film. There were 2 reasons for this moment. First, it's what Oskar Schindler saw when observing the liquidation of the Krakow ghetto. And secondly, Spielberg wanted to illustrate that America and Russia and England all knew the Holocaust was happening and nothing was done to prevent the endless and senseless slaughter of the 6 million Jews who were sent to the slaughter like sheep. It was a large blood stain, and no one did anything to stop it. Schindler's List was the first film Spielberg worked with Polish cinematographer Janusz Kaminski. Since this film, he has done every Spielberg movie. 75 days later, Schindler's List was complete. Now it was up to Spielberg, his lifelong collaborators, editor Michael Kahn, and composer John Williams, to fine-tune it and bring it to life. Opening on December 15th, 1993, Schindler's List was highly praised by critics and the film-going public. The film spawned new awareness into the Holocaust. It soon got nominated for 12 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. On March 21st of 1994, Oscar night had arrived. And in the end, it won 7 out of 12 for Best Art Direction, Music Score, Cinematography, Editing, Adapted Screenplay, Director.
I have friends who have won this before. And I swear, I have never held one before. This is the first time I've ever had one of these in my hand.
And Best Picture.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, wow. This is the best drink of water after the longest drought in my life.
Soon, the $22 million movie would ultimately gross $321.2 million worldwide. Using the money made from Schindler's List, Steven Spielberg established a nonprofit multimedia organization dedicated to recording videotape testimonies of Holocaust survivors. It's called the Survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation. It soon recorded over 52,000 videotape testimonies that would be used as a teaching tool to instruct future generations to come about overcoming racial hatred. One survivor was quoted as saying, "Oskar Schindler gave me life. Steven Spielberg gave me a voice. He is my second Schindler." And in a way, this is true. By creating the Shoah Foundation, Spielberg has added to the list of survivors from 1,100 to 52,000. Not from life in general, but their testimonies, their faces, and their voices will live on long after they're gone. I first saw Schindler's List when it was on TV on NBC. It featured an introduction with Steven Spielberg.
I made the film for this and future generations so that they would know and never forget that 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust and that history could not be denied. I could not be honest to that history or to the memories of its victims without depictions of violence and suffering.
And I remember being moved by the story of how one man can make a difference, but at the same time, I found it very difficult to watch a lot of the brutality, and I sort of forget that I'm watching a movie and that I'm watching real-life events taking place. And by the end of the film, I was very emotional. In particular, the scene when Schindler realizes that he pulled this off almost too late.
I could have got one more person, and I didn't. I didn't.
Never had I seen a film that really spoke to me about the importance of being a good person and to help those in need than this film. Because let's face it, we all look for an Oskar Schindler in our lives. Someone who could do what no one else would do, even in the face of adversity. When I started to become an avid Spielberg fan in my adult years, I would say that Schindler's List is by far the best film he done. And since then, the American Film Institute has placed it among their many lists of great films. So in closing, Schindler's List isn't the kind of film you watch to be entertained, you watch it to experience the horrible time period in our history that will never be forgotten. I believe that every human being on this earth should be required to see this film. Not to say that a 10-year-old kid should see it, they shouldn't. But once they are of age to see it, it would really make them think about a dark chapter in human history and how one man, not an army, can make a difference. Because after all, whoever saves one life saves the world entirely.